Your name again?
Hi, Jordan.
Jordan, good to see you, Jordan. I'm going to jump in because this time goes quickly.
Yeah, it does.
So I got some of my questions with you are just understanding the business because you base your revenue on 10% efficiency, but what I don't understand is how you get to that 10%. In other words, it seems to me that the consumer, that the household still has to separate their trash differently unless I'm missing something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, the core of that is the behavioral team sends these reports that I mentioned, giving the homeowners feedback on how well they're recycling, comparing them to similar households. So the idea behind that is like a core behavioral science principle, where they try to get people to refer to the social normative behavior. So if I send you a report saying, you're recycling 12% worse than the average, you're likely to check when you're throwing your stuff away. Well, maybe this goes into this bin instead of this bin.
So how do you measure? Because you get paid on differential, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you measure that? What's your base point? When you talk with Edco, how do you determine the baseline? Then how do you measure against that?
So we're going to be using historical data from Edco. They have all the data for each city that they work with. So basically, what percentage we increase it based upon previous revenue and expectation for increase in trash. Because trash increases 5 or 10% each year. So with that increase and with the historical data, we'll be able to get a picture of how well the recycling rates would be without us. And then from there, we can look at what our impact is.
So kind of walk, because you're going to have a contract with somebody. So kind of walk me through the nuances and detail of that contract that makes sure that at the end of a year you get a check from somebody.
Yeah. So we've been in direct contact with the CEO of Edco. My dad has worked with him on several other projects, so we've met with him a couple times. And what that contract would look like is basically saying, using this historical data, so for this month, you guys pick up this much recycling and this much trash. And then we would add the expectation for growth, so 5 or 10% increase in growth of trash and recycling. And then we would compare the number that they have for historical data to the number that they would actually get with our device on the trucks.
Do they not do anything at all to change? Because it would seem to me that.
It's in their best interest to try and get people to do it.
Yeah,
right?
sure, because they make more money, right?
Yeah.
So are they doing anything?
I mean, they have some programs, but realistically, they're not very effective. They're mostly trash guys. I mean, they're not a very
Except in New Jersey.
yeah, and
That's a bad joke, sorry.
I mean, their expertise isn't really in behavior change. And so that's where we come in. We offer that experience, that history where we've been able to get behavior change in the past.
And how long do you think it will take to change the behavior of a household? And then does your information go in their billing statement, or how does it get to them?
So it'll be mailed to them.
Independently or in their
It'll
statement?
likely be independently.
Okay.
Basically, sorry, can you phrase the question again?
Yeah, I'm just, so you need to change behavior at the household level.
Yeah.
So the question is, how are you getting your information to the household? For example, when I get my utility bill, there's a little thing in there that said, of the 100 houses in your neighborhood, you consume more electricity than anybody, which is the case, unfortunately. But
that actually piece of your electricity bill came straight out of my dad's lab at Cal State San Marcos.
Okay.
So it'll probably be a separate mailing system where we deliver it ourselves, or not deliver it, but like obviously.
The reason I ask the question is because when I get my SDG&E bill and it's there, I'll read it, and then anything that doesn't look like a bill or a check gets thrown away typically. So I just worry about, you getting to the customer because you got to make them change their behavior, obviously.
So it'll likely be independent, but I mean, my co-founder, my dad, has a lot of experience with sending these reports out. He's done it with the startup in Silicon Valley, which sold for $14 million. And he's done it with Keep America Beautiful out in Washington, D.C. So I think he wants to do it independently, so I assume there's a reason behind that.
Tell me, it sounds like you're depending on your dad for some of the experience, so tell me
Yeah.
about some of the businesses that he's grown and what similarities do they have to what you're doing here?
So he started a company called Action Research,
Mhm.
which basically did consulting for companies, and a lot of it was environmental studies. So they studied how well people were conserving water, they studied how well people were recycling all throughout San Diego County, and he's had contracts in Europe and especially in the Netherlands. So he's got a wealth of experience in creating this behavior change with the environmental issues. All he needs is the data that the actual hardware that we're building will provide, and he'll get that change.
Okay, and then, how far down the road are you? It sounds like you're doing a pilot program with EDCO. And what does that pilot look like?
So we'll start it this summer, and it'll run for 3 months. We think that, so the reports start going out after 2 weeks. Starting with the first 2 weeks, the behavior change will be incremental, but by the end of the 3 months, we'll be able to get our maximum, we'll be able to see how much we can change the behavior. So at the end of the 3 months, we'll know how big our effect is.
And you will know that by asking the consumer or by the amount of garbage you're picking up? Or-
Yeah, by the amount that they're picking up. So we'll have all the data, so we'll be able to see how, as that changes over time.
Okay. How do you envision using a portion, let's say 30 grand or a portion of 30 grand?
Likely to continue to work with our software guys. So they're working for free right now for a project for their school, but that ends at the end of this semester. And we'd like to keep at least 2 or 3 of those guys on because as we move forward, we're going to be more of a software company than anything else. So we need those guys to help us with the database, with building security. So a portion of that money would be to paying software people, as well as manufacturing our devices for the summer pilot.
Right. And then do you envision your company paying for all of the devices and installing them and then having the trash disposal companies just pay you some portion of whatever thing? Or
Yeah.
at some point do you envision selling those to them as well?
Selling the devices. So originally we're just going to we're going to pay for it, we'll install it, but down the road, I think that's definitely an option we could explore. But for where we are right now, we're so confident that we can get that behavior change that we'll put them on for free. They're not that expensive to build. It's $150 per device. And for a city of San Marcos that has 26,000 households, there's only 10 trucks. So those costs are pretty low for us.
And then what does your year 1, 2, and year 3 budget look like from a revenue and profitability standpoint?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, you have a budget for a couple of years of operation?
Yeah.
What does your revenue look like first 3 years, and what does your net income look like for the
So,
first 3 years?
the second we start putting the devices on the truck, we're profitable. It's super cheap for us. Our margins are huge. So if we get a 10% increase, like I was saying,
Right.
for San Marcos, we would have a 57% margin. So say in San Marcos, we get a 10% change, there would be an increase in revenue of about $400,000 per year for that city. So our take on that would be about 200. And on that 200 grand, we'd only have about $80,000 in costs, and most of that would be from printing and postage of those reports. So the longer it goes on, more of those reports start to move online, and our costs go way down.
So, question again, are you saying that your first year revenue budget is 120 grand or?
Yeah.
Okay,
About 120 grand
okay, and then,
for the first year, but starting in 2018, we'll be installing all throughout San Diego. So I don't even know what that would look like.
and then for the second year,
We look to expand outside Southern California.
right, but let's take San Marcos.
Okay.
Does the baseline always stay the same, other than the kind of yearly little increases?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
Yeah. But like I said, they think the behavior change is going to be more like 15%. That 10% is just the very minimum that they expect.
Well, but let's say you drive it to 15%,
Sure.
and it just stays at 15%
Sure.
for the next 5 years.
Uh-huh.
You theoretically still make money
Yeah.
because the baseline is still the original baseline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they make their money again because they sell the recyclables?
And they have to pay to dispose of the
Okay,
trash.
so they decrease their disposal costs and they increase their recyclable
Exactly. That's the core of the business.
revenue. Okay. Uh, Exit plan? You had mentioned that your dad had sold a couple businesses. Who do how does the exit occur here for an investor, and who's the buyer potentially?
So I think for us, we start out, Edco's our main client. Once we have that as proof that it works, we'll have some profit from them, a decent amount. If we're
Are they local? Edco?
Yeah, they serve 15 cities throughout San Diego County.
Okay.
So with just them as a customer, we would be about 3 or 4 million in profit each year. So
In
I think,
profit?
yeah, in profit.
Yeah.
So following that, I think once we have that confidence, we go to a waste management or Republic Services and show them this data, show them how much money we're making Edco. And I think that's our ultimate buyout plan is from one of those two giants to purchase us.
And I guess the question, or the nagging question that still sits in the back of my mind is, what's your percentage take?
On the revenue that we generate,
Yeah,
50%
you take 50%?
of whatever additional revenue we generate for them.
Okay. So in the case of Bedco, if you're generating 3 to 4 million from them, it's 6 to 8 million. They haven't, why would they not try and change behavior on their own, in their own mailings for 6 to 8 million bucks? Why haven't they figured that out?
They don't have a behavioral guy.
That's
I mean,
it?
there's not that many guys who can do that.
Okay.
There really isn't.
What about other more sophisticated companies around the country? Are they all kind of similar to
There
Bedco?
are companies that are trying this, that are trying these recycling programs, and they're like a company called Recycle Bank has a $5 million contract with the city of Phoenix. But their increase in rates is about 6 or 7%. So we can offer a way better increase than the existing companies do. And companies, a lot of companies like Edco aren't even trying to use these newer companies.
I'm a big believer in trying to align everyone's interests. So your interests are aligned with Edco's. Is there a way to motivate the household other than I just want to do the right thing and
Yeah.
recycle better?
So I think what's interesting about that is originally when I came up with this plan, I was talking to my dad about this, and I said, well, we can offer them incentives to recycle better. And he said, no, that's silly, because they get a better change in behavior with just giving them feedback than they would with incentives, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah, it seems crazy.
Yeah,
to
it
me.
seems crazy to me too, but they've seen this in multiple studies, multiple reports, where people change their behavior more when they're compared to the social norm than if they're given incentives,
Interesting.
which I personally thought was crazy, but I mean, he showed me the reports, he showed me the studies.
So that's part of the strategy then. It's not just when you send the information to the household, you're basically telling them that they're slackers, basically, that they're not recycling at the same rate that the neighbors are, and
Yeah.
they need to pick it up.
Yeah,
they're
and if you're-
socially irresponsible and those sorts of things.
Exactly, and if you're recycling better, you get this superiority complex, right? I'm so good at recycling, I better keep doing it.
Okay. Are there tips you can give them as well to recycle better?
That's the other part of the report. So part of it will be feedback on how they're doing compared to the social norms, and then the other part will be tips on what things to recycle, how to recycle better.
What does that look like? Give me some examples.
So like it'll be like a milk carton. You can recycle this, or like things like that. Like here are things you can recycle, here are things you can't recycle. Don't do this, do this.
Is there consistency in the industry? In other words, does San Marcos recycle the same way that San Diego does, that Swan Beach does?
So there is a pretty big difference throughout the nation, but in terms of regionally, it's pretty similar between San Marcos and San Diego. But you might see a difference between San Francisco and San Diego, or San Francisco and LA. Across the nation, it's a lot different.
So
but in terms
if
of
the
regional
investors
pockets, it's
will
really similar.
to the green room
Thank you.
behind the stage in the IPJ.